Hello, hello, and welcome to the Color Whisperer Show, where we talk about all things home and healing. And today we have a very unique healer on, and she's going to tell us about what she does. It's really, I've never heard anything like it. So you're going to be amazed. And we are blessed, we are blessed to have Tammy with us, Tammy Rocha. So, Tammy, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Hi,
Oh,
Jeanette.
it's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
So, tell us the name of your business, first of all.
So it's Tammy Incorporated. That's the nonprofit. And the for-profit is Innovation LLC, which basically means that you plug in the nerves. And that's what I do as a massage therapist. I'm specifically a neurological massage therapist.
Okay, so you've already said a lot of words that
Yes.
what? So let's back up a little bit. So let's start with, I think plugging in the nerves is, let's describe that. I think that's going to describe your neurological massage. So let's talk about, what does that mean, you're plugging in the nerves?
So every nerve has an origin to an insertion. And instead of going in invasively and doing surgery or any type of PT or anything medical, I quite literally take the nerve from the origin to the insertion by combing it through and plugging it in so that that part of the body starts to function again, whether that's the brain or the face or the teeth or the tongue, the heart in some cases, helping some people walk, helping some people digest. Everything needs to be plugged in. And I always relate it to a toaster on a countertop. If you have your toaster plugged in, it's going to work. You're going to pop toast. But if your nerve is not plugged in, you're not going to blink. You're not going to be able to speak, digest, all those things.
So like a muscle, when you work out or you do something, you pull a muscle, right?
Yes.
So that means it's moved from its insertion or origin spot. I know I also did Touch for Health many years ago, and we had different things we could do to ease the muscle and put it back into place. But then, so the nerves, it works the same way.
Yes. Similarly, more so when people are manually manipulating the actual muscle itself, then they're only kind of twitching it around, moving it around to get it to be unlocked from the position that it was in to then be released to move into where it's supposed to go. But if it's stuck in an area that just won't allow it any type of movement, like say in a joint or an encapsulation, then it needs to be unwound, rerouted, and actually plugged in. And that'll make the muscle work.
So what's an encapsulation?
An encapsulation is when the nerve unplugs from its charted territory, it begins to coil up, and then it has a little bubble that goes around it to save the nerve's synaptic bulb. It keeps it from being damaged by anything inside of the body, whether it's a movement or other bacterium or things that may be attacking it. Say in a fire, when we get those little boils or bubbles on our body, it's our nerves pulling out and our body's trying to encapsulate so that it keeps the moisture in instead of our bodies dehydrating out of themselves. So what that little nerve does is it coils up, balls up, and then it starts to climb its way back towards the spinal cord, which is the origin.
Interesting. And there's so many nerves in our spine. So you mainly work on the spine, or are you working throughout the whole body?
Throughout the whole body. Say if someone has, they ding their finger and they've had this joint that came out and it's not feeling good months later, even though they've massaged it and they've gone to chiropractic and they still can't click their mouse. Well, I need to go ahead and break apart that tissue that's stuck in there and then pull that nerve all the way from the spine, route it back down the arm, put it into the hand, into the finger, and you'll hear this neat little pop or snap or click, and I'll feel like a little tapioca bubble or like a little boba bubble. And once that little nerve bursts out, then I'm able to capture it and then put it back where it's supposed to go. So it's no longer encapsulated.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So
is this kind of like massage?
It's not like your usual massage. It's not like, and this is one of the things that one of my clients was saying, it's like, what are you going to call this thing? Because it's not like anything else. I'm kind of using all the techniques like Swedish and not really too much of deep tissue or sports, but it's having all the knowledge of everything and being able to use and utilize all of those processes to pick up the nerve. It's more of a combing process. not quite like, say, gua sha or scraping. So you're not mulling over and pushing through and smashing the nerve. I'm actually picking it up and telling it to move the direction that it's supposed to and to get it to plug in. So it's a little bit different from regular massage. It's not
But
just pushing.
okay, but it's I mean, for a layman, kind of what am I expecting? You're gonna expect sort of a massage. It's just
Yes,
not.
yes. If you come into the office, you're gonna expect a massage. I'm gonna use the oils, a little bit of a lotion if I need to, but mostly oils.
Okay, that's so cool. And so let's talk. So nerves. So you do a lot of physical and neurological. That was the name of what you called it, neurological.
Mhm.
So that could be things like seizures, like OCD, like walking, people who have difficulty walking, back
Yeah,
pain. I mean, a lot of back pain has to do with nerves. So
yes.
tell me more about your specialties.
Okay, so although the specialty is its own little bracket of neurological massage, it helps with everything. So it's not just the brain and all the nerves that come out of it. It's not just the spine and all the nerves that come out of it. It could be an actual brain injury like CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And so if there's something in the actual brain that's stuck, I need to use the nerves to help the actual brain. If there's something that's stuck in the jointing of the vertebrae of the spine, I need to go in there and unplug or unpluck the little areas that are stuck in those regions. And then once that is undone, then I'm able to go ahead and maneuver and manipulate all of those nerves to where they're supposed to go.
Uh-huh. So you can fix a brain injury.
I can fix a brain injury. Say,
That
for instance, there was a woman that I know who actually has given me a little space of an office to work in because I helped her out, which is great. And she had gone on a boat trip with her family, and when they were unloading the boat off the slip, there was that kind of like that sea moss that gathers on the boat slip when you're trying to take everything out. Well, it was so slippery, so super slippery that when she tried to maneuver in a certain way, her body fell and she fell on one side of her body and hit her head on the cement. And in that, she caused herself a little bit of a brain injury. She went to the doctor and they put her on some meds and they gave her some ice, which, by the way, is not the thing to do because it actually hardens the region. I'll get back to that. And they sent her home and said, just get some rest and you should be fine in a few days to a couple of weeks. Well, 2 weeks, she calls me and says, hey, I have this thing and I know that I should have called you right away, but it's not going away. I need help. So I went ahead and I worked on her. And that day, I'd say we took about 80% of that injury away. She still had a little bit of it left over. But then the following week, we went ahead and worked on it again. And then she was 100% well. And it was because the inflammation inside of her head, inside of her brain, jostled her skull so much that it dislodged some of the nerves, causing them to rubber band and shoot right back to the brain. And I was able to, using the facial regions that are open, bring that nerve forward and then also take all the inflammation out of her head and drain that for her so that now all those things from the nerves to the brain could actually function appropriately. And now she's great.
wow. And you have a couple of we have some pictures of some of your success stories
Thank
because
you.
what you do is just so freaking amazing. It's hard to believe, like you're a miracle worker, but it's all done naturally. And
Yes.
I there's so many different parts of our neurological being. So let's see if we can. Mark, do you have the pictures? I think I see that you have pictures. So let's pull up one of the sets of pictures and then we'll tell the story around it. Because our our nerves are such an integral part of how we perceive trauma, how we perceive life,
Yes.
how we physically move in the world.
Yes.
To be able to calm that down, reactivate it, it's life changing.
Yes.
Life changing.
Absolutely. And how we live in the world, like you were pointing out, somebody's perspective on how the world is all dependent on how they feel, whether they're having a psychosomatic episode or whether they're having emotional trauma or they're having pain from smashing their foot into an ottoman or having lost breasts from mastectomies. There's still nervous tissue that is giving phantom pain and needs to be taken care of as well. Pictures come up. Thank you.
Magic.
I love that. This is a client of mine that I saw, and you'll see there, back in 2021, and she gave me the authority to go ahead and share these images. But she had an ICD implant, and with that ICD implant, which kind of
what's an ICD implant?
Yes. So it's similar to a pacemaker, but it's called an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. So it's basically, it's a jump start. So if your heart decides that it wants to go too slow or too fast or just completely stop, it'll jumpstart you. And so in that, she had, she was a softball player, and she had gone out and had an event and had a really difficult day, and it was hot on top of it all. And she came home, took a shower, put some ice on. Again, ice, will go back to that as well. And when she got home, she wanted to play on her iPad for a little while, and she laid on her tummy on her bed. And you know that thing when you kind of arch your back a little bit and you hold your device and you put your neck up and you can kind of do that? Well, because of the way the device is placed in the human body, when you do certain movements, it can actually shift the device. It can also shift where it's placed in the heart. So you'll kind of see in that imaging, if someone was to get really close in there, you can see the actual electrical cord come out, go into the atrium, and a right atrium, and then it goes down into the right ventricle. So it's placed on, there you go. I love that. And so you can see that little wiring in there, it gets jostled and moved. So our whole system is a netting system. And when she did that, everything moved back. I was able to move everything back forward, appropriate her nerves down her arms, down into her chest, and then also get the nerves that were in her neck and bring them into the forward part, so that a nerve called the vagus nerve, which goes from your brain into your thorax, and it winds around and causes different parts of our thoracic region to work. But one of its main functions is to calm the heart and to make the heart continue to work in times of tragedy. And so this was one of those things, and it wasn't doing that. So within a matter of 2 weeks, she was having several heart attacks, and she was ending up in the hospital. And it got to the point where the fire department already knew her name when they were going to come pick her up, because it was so often. And the doctors, her cardiologist, and they were called MIA specialists. I forgot what the specifics are on that, but they were at a loss. They basically told her that this is the way she's going to live from now on, and that one of these heart attacks was going to take her life eventually. And so it happened to be that my kinesiology instructor referred her to me after hearing her story. And then she was also saying that she has pain radiating from her back. And so those are the nerves close to the spine that had pulled towards her back that I had to stretch and bring back down towards the front of her. And so this kinesiology teacher and instructor put her on the phone with me, and we did a FaceTime that was supposed to be 10 minutes. It probably ended up being about a half an hour or so, because I broke down to her what was going on inside of her. And she says, my doctors haven't said anything that explains what you have told me in the last 20 minutes to half an hour. And so we made an appointment, and I honestly, that first session, I worked on her for about 4.5 hours. So it was about a half an hour of talking, the rest on the table, and then afterwards telling her no more ice, no stretching, no yoga, no softball, no moving around. Leave the nerve where I placed it so that you can heal. And once you heal, and give it 3 to 5 days, once you're recoagulated and your nerves are now staying where they're supposed to, then you can now go and do those things. You can eat what you want. You can do what you want. You can go and stretch again. You can live the life that you had before this final injury that put you over the edge. So that was amazing.
That is really cool.
Thank you. And this was her text to me afterwards, and I just took a quick screenshot, and it says, going on with your, let me see, go and scroll down. So basically, she was thanking me because, oh, there it goes down at the bottom, that her doctors and her MIA cardiologist were no help, and that I was the most help in the last 3 weeks of the awfulness. And I was just letting her know there's a lot of information that's not out there, which is why, by the way, when you said that you had a podcast and you'd be willing to host something, I was so appreciative. So thank you, Jeannette, by the way. I'm so thankful to even be in your universe right now. And I want to talk about your stuff too, because I love it. But, but she was just superiorly thankful that I was able to help her with something that she could not get help on and find any information on out there in the world.
Yeah, energy is such an incredible thing. And our bodies have this amazing capacity to heal if we give them the right environment.
Yes.
You know? So you've mentioned twice now you don't put ice on. So let's go into that.
Yes. So in our bodies, let's just say there's a nerve that goes from your spine and your neck all the way to your throat. And let's just say you had an injury where you were playing softball. I'll go back to her, for instance, and you get hit. Well, your nerve doesn't want to get hit, so it pulls back to protect itself. So we still have skin, we still have all the covering, it's still protected overall, but the nerve inside, a main branch of it could have flung back here. Well, in that pathway from here all the way to the back is a little tiny tubule, a little avenue, a little street, a conduit where the nerve used to be. And when it slithers out, there's this empty tubule. And when that nerve is sliding back, it doesn't just shoot back like a rubber band. At the same time, it's also releasing neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are fluid and gases. And these fluids and gases, which are, pain signals, and your body's trying to calm itself and, send different chemicals, epinephrine, all these types of things. And it fills the little tubule with all of these gases and fluids. So when the nerve tries to get back here and we put ice on it, we've now blocked that path. So yes, the nerve may numb. The nerve may not twitch or be angry anymore and feel pain anymore. But finally, when you take that ice pack off, within 20, 30 minutes, not only is your neck in pain again, but that nerve is trying to poke through a solid. So if we have an ice cube and we melt it, it's fluid, it's liquid, it's water. So what you want is you want this to stay liquid so that that nerve can quickly find its way back home, whether it's to your throat, your thyroid, any of your cartilage that's in there, your esophagus, anything that's in this structure, it could have flung back from when you got hit with something. So keeping it warm is much better than putting cold on it, because the cold is only going to numb it, and cold is only going to harden that area that should stay and remain moist and lubricated for that nerve to find its way home again.
Wow. And I think this is a great send off into the next picture that we have. Yes. If our picture can come up, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Is this the one you want?
Sure. Whichever order is fine. Okay. This is a lady, I believe she's in her early 70s, and she has Bell's palsy. And so when the nerve comes out of the face, it tugs on one side as the nerves are pulling back, and the other side begins to shift this way, because two things with Bell's palsy is that there's no spine in your head to keep from, if one side shifts, then the other side just keeps tightening up, because where our brain had the nerve leaves the brain and it goes towards the front and braces towards the front of the face. But if this is unsnapped and it continues to fall this way, then this area starts to tighten up while this one lets go. So the injury was actually on the opposite side of where she thought. The injury is actually on the side of the face where it's let go. So that's where you see it crunching up. And then the side that's still attached takes over. So you'll see that when I pushed her nerves and pulled her nerves and guided her nerves with fingers and knuckles and gently pulled all of the nerves forward and placed them to where they're supposed to be, because there's certain nerves in the cranium that go to the eye. There's certain nerves in the cranium that go through the ear and through the TMJ, the little joint here, the temporal mandibular joint here, and those go into certain pieces of the face. There's also the trigeminal, which goes to the eyebrow, the upper lip and teeth, and the lower lip and teeth. And all of those have to be appropriated very, very specifically. So say if someone was to watch me do a process, they should not repeat it, because they don't know what I'm feeling with my hands. And if they do something based off of what they saw me do, they don't know what I felt in order to go, oh, okay, well, that's there. Let me capture that and put it where it's supposed to go. Oh, this is here. Let me capture that. That actually goes here. So I know where things come out of and where they go to. So that was after one session with her Bell's palsy. And then I saw her maybe 6 months, 7 months later, just because she wanted an update. It wasn't really coming back, but she wanted to make sure that it didn't come back. And she looked just as good as when I saw her, when I left her that last time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Mark, I think you've got another picture there that we definitely want to talk about, because I mean, this is just such an amazing transformation. So it's physical. I mean, the nerves affect us physically and what we're able to do. We just saw that with the face.
Yes.
And it's really amazing. I know my mom had polio, so she had some issues with stuff that she wasn't able to do because,
yes.
you know, but I believe polio damages the nerves, and
Yes.
then it affects the muscles.
Yes.
So if you can repair the muscle, if you can repair the nerves in something like that, that's physical, then the body can heal.
And then the musculature starts to actually work again. I have MS clients that are referring other MS clients to me, and they're saying, you can help with muscular sclerosis. I'm like, yes, it just means multiple hardenings. And so, like I was saying, with the ice versus the heat, if you keep yourself warm and if you take the appropriate vitamins, the ones that are not too drying inside of you, the ones that are moisturizing you, and if you mobilize yourself, but you don't do anything too difficult for your body, then you can actually bring your body back. A lot of them have digestive issues because a lot of it starts from like the intestines down. And the things that I find inside of them are amazing. One gentleman had a football sized and then also grapefruit sized mass inside of his intestines. And it was all from the excess neurotransmitters, like I showed you with this. Those tubules were blocked. There was at some point an injury. And when those nerves were blocked off, they weren't able to come back home and make his intestines work. And so when your intestines don't work, your legs go out, your lower back goes out, and then it starts to crawl up your spine because it's literally shutting down vertebrae by vertebrae. And then eventually they're in a wheelchair. But if I can get them before they're in wheelchairs, I can more than help.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would have loved to have met your mom. And if you only knew how many times I heard people say, I wish I'd met you before, my uncle died or before my mom died or something. And I would say since 2013, I've heard that no less than 1,000 times, if not more. Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty amazing.
Just really quickly, those are the only pictures that I was able to find, but I did have a quick question for you, Tammy, while you will send me the pictures. But what exercises would you give to folks that have MS? Because as Jeannette knows, I had an aunt that passed of MS, and I have a younger brother that actually has MS now. And of course, he's very much active and all along those lines. But what kind of exercises would you recommend for people in terms of healing that are dealing with that ailment, as it is something that my brother is dealing with?
I love it. Thank you for even asking that question. Okay, so since MS is a hardening disease, you want to do things that are more flowy. And in that instance, you want to do stuff like Pilates, but you don't want to have them use the machines, the reformers. You want to have them just do the floor Pilates, something that expands their body, but does not over expand their body, because then the spine rubber bands all those nerves back towards the spine instead of leaving them more forward and placed to where they should be. I know all yoga instructors are going to hate me for this, but not doing yoga is going to help MS, because yoga is too much holding and the nerves don't like the holding, so they let go. So a lot of yoga instructors that are my clients end up with tons of injuries, and it's because they're doing those holding poses for 1 class, 2 class, 3 class, sometimes 4 classes a day. And if each of those classes are an hour or so, they are really damaging themselves. So say someone has MS, they want to do the more flowy things. They want to do the Tai Chis. They want to have also when they're eating, they want to have warm food. You want to have the teas. You want to make sure you're pooping, because if you're not, your entire intestines, like I was saying, they get blocked, and then that blocks the path of the nerves to the legs. It also starts to sit on the arteries that are our blood flow to our legs. So if you basically take a balloon and you keep blowing it up inside of your stomach, and then it drops into your intestines, you're not going to have any circulation in the walls of the cavity of the pelvis, because the bones are going to stop it. So that balloon is going to press on that pelvis and eventually shut down the function. For foods, you don't want to have too many vegetables, because a lot of fiber will actually clog the intestines. If you're going to do chicken, do boiled chicken and barbecued chicken. Don't do anything too dry, because you want the moisture. If you're going to do pastas, do gluten-free. Don't do with gluten, because then you're not getting the inflammation inside of your intestines, and also in your skin and in your brain. Gluten's it's a bit of a killer. I know I try to go 80% gluten-free, but sometimes I really want that pizza, and gluten-free is not as good as regular good old pizza with everything on it. So you can have cheat days. You can have, marathons. You can do all the stuff you want to do. But when you're spending the 80% of your life on a daily basis, you want to make sure to treat your body and your cycles of life smoothly and softly and fluidly, as opposed to hard and no CrossFit, nothing that's going to basically beat your booty up to the point where you feel like you need a nap for 2 days.
Understood. I'm going to drop off. I did find those pictures after Jeannette sent them again, so I'm going to drop off, and then we'll bring the toddler picture up as well.
I love it. Thank you.
Here we go.
Yay, I'm so happy it came up. Thank you. Okay, so this was 2 years ago. This was an 11-month-old baby that had club legs and club feet. What that basically is, I'll show you on my arms, is it's when your legs are folded in, and then also her feet were folded in. So basically she was using her arms and her hands to walk, to drag herself, while the back of her body was coiled up like her legs folded basically. And she wasn't even trying to walk at one point. So her grandmother texted me and said, hey, if I bring you my granddaughter and she has these issues, can you help with this? And I said, well, if she lets me work on her, because she is 11 months old, if she's patient with me and she lets me work on her, we can get that fixed. She's like, really? And I said, yeah. So she goes, I'll be there in a little while. So she changed her granddaughter's diaper, ran a couple of errands, and then came over to my place. We put her on a little stool that you see right there. And then at one point we put her up on the massage table, and I had made sure to have a little snack for her. I got little Fruit Loops and a little sippy cup with some water and a straw. And she sat there and she was so entertained by everything that we had given her, and the fact that she was in a new atmosphere. She let me work on her, which I was so happy for. So I took the nerves that were sitting outside of her body, sitting in her glutes, sitting behind her legs and kneecaps, sitting behind her heels, and then wound up her body, not allowing her body to reappropriate and to actually use her feet and legs the way that they should be used. I went ahead and rotated all of those things into her intestines, which is kind of like the MS thing. And then I rotated the nerves outside of her thighs into her inner thighs, into the front, and then from behind her knees into the front of her knees, and then did the same thing all the way down to the front of her feet, even down from her heels to her big toes. And then I went ahead and heard a huge pop, and that was the committing of it into the leg. And so then I handed her to her grandmother, and I said, face her towards you. I'm going to pop her hips in, but you need to hold her because she's going to wiggle around on this one. And so I went into her glutes. All of it's on clothes over the diaper, by the way, which is totally awesome. I had plastic gloves on. I was able to work on her superficially over everything. And so I moved those nerves out over her glutes into her hips, and I popped them in, and she kind of jolted and looked back at me like, how dare you? What are you doing? And I said, okay, give her a few minutes, let her move around, let her crawl around. We'll give her some toys to play with. She can have these Fruit Loops and some water to go ahead and relax. And I said, she's going to poop in the next few minutes. She goes, no, I changed her about an hour ago or so, and she's on about a 4-hour cycle. She doesn't poop in between those 4 hours. And I said, well, I just plugged in her intestines, so I can guarantee you within the next few minutes, she's going to poop. She's like, okay. So we started talking about something else. We walked into the kitchen, and we were talking. We came back into the room, and she goes, oh my God. She goes, what is that? And so she picked up her granddaughter. She goes, I think she pooped. And I'm like, yeah, I think she pooped. So she went ahead and checked her, went to the other room, changed her. She said her diaper was full, and that never happens. She's on a 4-hour cycle, period. And once she was done doing this, I said, okay, now that her intestines are empty, I can finish combing those nerves into the intestine, run those nerves down the leg and commit it. And then we'll see how she does. And if she needs another treatment, then we'll figure it out at that time. I went ahead and worked on her, finished working on her. She crawled around for a little bit, didn't really walk. She didn't walk. Oh, that's a good one. If there's a possibility to brighten that picture, like make it lighter, you can see the nerve channel going down her leg and down her feet. You can see lumps on her feet, and those are the nerves, the actual tubule, the fat conduit of the nerves coming down as a netting system together, and they were being reappropriated there. So she went ahead and drove home. She put her in her car seat. She had errands still to go ahead and do. She left, and then about 45 minutes after she left my place, she texted me and she said, she's walking. And I was like, what? And I was so excited. So she brought her back over 2 weeks later, and I went ahead and took some video shots of her. And so I just went ahead and just to save her privacy, because she's only, I guess she's 3 now, because this was 2 years ago and she was 11 months old at the time. But she's been fine. She's chasing her 2 older brothers. And since she began to walk, she has not been stoppable at all.
I love it. I love it. That's so amazing.
Thank you. I love you so much.
So amazing. So physical stuff, but can you do more psychological stuff? Like, do you deal with trauma?
Yes. So I personally have OCD, ADHD, PTSD, and I didn't find out till I went to college the second time in my 30s that I have dyslexia. And I always struggled in high school, junior high, elementary school, all of those, but I had no true idea. No one ever had me tested. And then I had a traumatic childhood. At the age of 6.5, I was molested as a child, and that gave PTSD to the point where it actually caused my OCD to kick in later, because I needed something to help me focus. So I was either completely erratic, or I was so completely focused that I was zoned out. I never had a happy in between. So working on myself, I realized that there were a lot of nerves that come out of the brain that, if they're popped out, whether you were hit in the head as a kid, or you had a fall, or somebody yelled at you and you went within yourself and you secluded your emotions, all of those are disconnections of nerves, which is why when you go to acupuncture or acupressure, if they put a needle in somewhere, it will actually set or bring the trauma back to the forefront of your thoughts. So what I do is I bring those nerves that have fallen back, been triggered and pulled back, and I bring them forward. And ADHD and OCD, there's a couple of little areas at the top of the head that, if that person is lying down and I rub the top of their head where they've had trauma, or where they hold their emotional status, if you will, that will start to wiggle. So at one point I had a mom sit and watch while I was working on her. I think she was 4 years old. I said, watch this. And so the little girl, she was just relaxed. I touched the top of her head and her feet went. And then I touched one side and her foot went like that. I touched the other side. And then basically they kind of went back and forth. And so I was showing her, this is where she's holding her trauma. And as a baby, we have something called fontanelles, and they're little sutures and structures and little cartilage pieces that allow the cranium to grow and shape and expand without having to break the skull itself. And we have them as adults, but sometimes those stay open longer because of trauma. And so I can reach inside of there and I can touch those things and actually manually manipulate the nervous system through those sutures from the outside of the head and the outside of the body.
And we're frozen. All right. So that's been going on today. This is the second time today that's happened. But we will get her back very shortly. And yeah, I think it's so amazing what she does. Hey, Mark.
It is amazing. I don't know what's going on with the freezing. Hopefully she can get unfrozen. She might have to pop back in and pop back out. I know that happened with the other person as well. Because one of the things I was going to ask about, and I think I brought it up to you one time, so I hope that Tammy can come back, is, and maybe you've got some thoughts while we're waiting for Tammy to come back, is I know that too often these kind of things aren't diagnosed, because I know that Tammy herself had just mentioned that she was, I think, diagnosed with dyslexia at a older age. And I think I've told you before that I have dysgraphia, which is like a form of dyslexia. And I know that it wasn't diagnosed until I want to say I was well into my professional career. So it's probably like in the late 20s or early 30s. I'd already gone through high school and college before it was even diagnosed. And ironically, it was diagnosed because I was working for Goodwill, and Goodwill sometimes will do some like cognitive tests as part of the Goodwill program and everything. So during that time is when I was discovered to have this dysgraphia and everything. So while we're waiting for Tammy to come back, any theories as to why our school systems and just society in general doesn't do a good enough job of catching it at an earlier stage?
Well, I think you're talking about the dyslexia and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So years ago, I used to listen to Dr. Drew. I grew up. He was doing Loveline when I was like 15, and I listened to him for quite some time. And now he's got his own podcast and everything. But Loveline has been gone for a while. And his theory, and my limited experience with it makes sense, is that children who go through trauma, it literally crosses the wires in their heads, and it can be the cause of dyslexia, amongst other things. But dyslexia is often a situation of, it might be something as simple as, there's the famous scene from, it's either Kiss Me Kate, I don't know if it's in Kiss Me Kate, but it's the Taming of the Shrew, where he's telling her the sky is green and she's saying, no, it's blue. And I think we all go through that at some point in life where somebody's telling us something that's just not true. And they're doing a pretty damn good job of selling it. And so if you're a little kid, then those wires are getting crossed of what's right and what's wrong. And so that's one perspective. I know I have a niece and nephew, and both of them have some issues in that department, and they went through some pretty icky stuff when they were little. And never forget, my niece came to me one day and she says, what do you think of my mother? And this diatribe went off in my head. This psychology dissertation went off in my head. And I was like, what does she really need to know? And she needs to know that she's being told two sets of what's right in life. And she needed to know what was real, because it wasn't, she was being told that black was white and white was black. And so I gave her the information from my perspective and said, well, this is my perspective. And, this is what I believe is to be right. But anyway, so we're back to Tammy.
You're back to Tammy, and I'm going to go back and turn y'all back.
Hopefully you can splice it together.
Yeah, just really quickly, Tammy, I was telling Jeannette that I could relate to part of what you were talking about in terms of the being diagnosed with dyslexia at a later part of life, because I was diagnosed with dysgraphia when I was well into my late 20s or early 30s, after I'd already gone through college and high school and even gone into the whole notion of work life and everything. And then I was diagnosed, ironically, through Goodwill, is what I was telling Jeannette. So I went through like a Goodwill program, and they did some of those cognitive tests, and that's when they said, you have dysgraphia. And I'm going like, wait a minute, I've gone through life, and now I'm just finding this out. So it's quite interesting.
It's true. I barely graduated high school. I mean, they were shoving me out. Like, you're not staying another year. Get the hell out of here. But it's just because I didn't know that. And it wasn't even a reading issue. Well, it was a reading issue, but it was like, it was a focus and an absorption and a processing issue. Like, I could read a sentence 5-6 times and I read it cleanly and clearly, but my brain wasn't capturing the message. So everybody was reading something once and then answering the question, moving on to the next thing for a test. And I'm like, I can't get past this one question. So when I was diagnosed in college, and it was to go back to school to prove this thing either wrong or correct, whatever it was going to be, I had a chemistry teacher that said, you need to go get tested for this, this, and this, because all you need is more time on your test. You're doing great on the labs. You've got all the homework. When you're at home, you're in your own quiet spot. You're doing great. But when it came to the testing, whether someone was snapping their gum or clicking their pen or erasing or a cough or a sneeze or anything, it would throw me off emotionally. And then my brain would go elsewhere. And before you knew it, that half an hour test that everybody finished in 15 minutes, I'm on number 2 out of 10. And I'm like, I can't pass this. And then when I got the diagnosis, what you do is you turn in that paperwork to the campus. Those counselors put you in a room by yourself and you're taking a test. I was done like that, and I was getting A's and B's. And I was like, what? This is all I needed, was a quiet space. So yeah, I learned through all of my bads to make not only myself better, but other people better. And I'm like, don't be ashamed of it, because once you know what your issue is, whether it's you need a cane or crutches or a walker, then it helps you in life. Who knew that I needed crutches, So mentally and emotionally, I needed crutches. So I live with that, and I'm okay with it. So where were we, by the way?
Right. So yes. Can you help with OCD and get rid of it?
Yes. So I've had, I can't even tell you how many OCD, PTSD. I've probably only had maybe 20, 25-ish. ADHD, I've had so many. I mean, almost everyone on my table has some version of ADHD. And when their nerves are reappropriated, whether it's because they stubbed their toe or because they had, a neck injury or they fell, it's all related. It's all correlated. Once those nerves are plugged in, they can function. So ADHD, PTSD, all of that, all of the above.
Yes. And can you do work virtually, or is it only in person?
If I've worked with someone already and they've been on my table and I've shown them not only physically on their person, but I've shown them on me and I've shown them why, then they can FaceTime me. Because if they're going through something, let's just say that person with the ICD, the pacemaker, she was at 10:30 at night texting me. Luckily, I had my phone on, and she said, it's happening. What do I do? And so I said, put me on FaceTime. She sat her phone there. I sat my phone there. She looked at me. I showed her where to put her fingers. I showed her what to do. She lubed up. She put it back. She's like, okay, it's gone. I'm like, okay. So, and she's called me at 1:30 in the morning, and I have no problem. If my phone is on and I catch it, I'm answering. I don't care who it is, because I know that someone needs me. I mean, if it's a random number, of course, you're going to voicemail. But if it's a client coming through and I know that they're having an issue, I'm answering that phone.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do that too. I don't necessarily answer at 1:30 in the morning, but but I have I will answer, it's like if I'm awake, if I'm ready to do something, I will answer. I've talked to clients at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. That's not regular, but sometimes that's when it has to be.
Yes.
And like you, it's like, hey, we got to solve this problem. And if 10 minutes now is going to solve the problem, let's do it. right?
Yes, definitely. Well, we met in this healers group, and
Yes.
I came into this meeting that we're having here thinking, what color am I going to wear? Knowing that you're the color whisperer, and I always revert back to gray. I love gray. It goes with everything, and at the same time, it goes with nothing. So can you, like, since we did meet in this healers group and you told me a little bit there, and when we talked later and I found out more about it, can you give me a little bit on maybe what that means to me?
Absolutely. So what I deal with is there's basically 4 personality types. Now, there's a bunch of different things out there, different ways they come about it. And so the idea is to have something that goes with your energy. So there are the movers, the shakers, the leaders, the action takers. There's the cheerleader. There's people who really just need to be, they're gidget. They're just happy all the time. Like, I remember when I was in school, I was in 7th, 8th grade, and oh, I just forgot her name. Anyway, the lady who was in charge of like if you showed up sick, you had to go in and turn your letter in there.
Yes.
And oh, it was like Sunshine. Her name was Sunshine or something like that. She always had a big grin on her face, huge grin. I can't even do it. And then I saw her mad one day, and she was still, like the corners of her mouth were.
Yes.
But let me tell you, her being mad, it was like, whoa, you know you did something wrong.
Wow.
So then you have the supporters, and then you have they're very the I never really came up with a good name for this, but the supporters, they don't like to be in the front. They don't like to. They're happy behind the scenes. And then you have the people who like to be out front, like, look at me, So just because you asked, gray is probably not the best color for you.
Okay.
Because what happens is, if you look at yourself on the screen, I can see your face clearly,
Yes.
but I look at your body and like it's dead. Like there's dead energy there. So if
like
you
muted.
right? Because the gray is not as vibrant as your personality.
Aw.
Okay. Now if you look at what I'm wearing,
Yes.
okay, so this, like, you don't just see this, you see everything, right?
Right.
That's what you want. If you just, anytime you put anything on, and if all you see is like that thing,
Yes.
or if you just see like your head, like right now, it's like you might as well be like a little bobblehead, like just, it's not,
Yes.
but like it feels disconnected, right?
Yes.
And so when you're wearing the colors that fit you,
Yes.
you won't have that disconnected feeling. You are more seen that way.
Yes.
And people are going to be more comfortable with you because it's obvious you're more comfortable within your own. So I've been eyeing the chair behind you. Can you move a little bit and let me see the pattern? See, I love that.
And look at the colors of the wall are beige.
Right.
And I've got cream on my comforter there. This is my niece's room, but I still have it in muted colors. I think I've always kind of been an introvert in certain situations. And it's kind of funny because as a massage therapist, they want you almost always to wear all black. The reason is because you're not in the room.
Right.
The guest is the only one in the room.
Right.
And they are to blank you and everything out so that they can enjoy themselves. That is their time, their moment. And with me, I don't like to be seen, which has been kind of one of my things with trying to get out there into the world, is because I do tend to mute myself. So gray has just always been like, I feel at home in it.
It's a place for you to hide, though.
Yes.
Something so amazing that you don't want to hide in it. Now, what I like about the chair you're sitting on, yes, it's got a little bit more color. It's also got a lot of high contrast. If you look at your skin, your hair, your teeth, your eyes, high contrast.
Yes.
So you can do that. You
Yes.
can do, and you need to have brighter colors. The gray, it's not,
Yes.
it's not. So we
Yes.
need to have brighter colors. Now,
Yes.
if you're wanting to disappear and still be, and actually, what I think might be a really interesting color for you in finding the right shade is either green or blue, because both of those are healing colors. I have a
Mm.
Zeus, and she wears navy blue. She doesn't
Okay.
wear the black. She does wear black too, but she wears a lot of navy blue. She feels more
Yes.
comfortable in that. So
Yes.
blue is a very healing color. Blue is physically healing.
Yes.
And so for what you're doing, that's really good, depending on who you're working with. I will often dress for my client that I'm seeing that day. I will,
Okay.
if I'm presenting a lot of change,
Mm.
I'll wear green, because green is helps you deal emotionally with change. If
Okay.
I'm more in the beginning stage of things, I'll often wear orange, because orange is all about creativity
I
and
love orange. Yeah. I love
right.
that. And it's funny
So
that you would mention green and blues because even when I wear greens and blues, I tend to go towards the really dark blues and
yes,
the really dark greens. So I'm still in the hidden mode.
but those two, so green is going to help you deal with emotional change, which with the level of change that you're creating in somebody, they need both.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
need the physical healing element. They also need the emotional healing element,
Mm-hmm.
because that little girl, as much as that was a joyous thing,
Yeah.
that lady with the face, and she was elated,
Yeah.
but there's still an element of having to process that. So during COVID, right before COVID, I learned a new technique. And I had this friend who didn't believe in any of this stuff. It's hoo ha, it's crazy. I'm not going to do none of it. Right? And I knew he would never, ever ask me to work on him. But I said, it was true. I needed to work on people in person. And it was hard to work on people in person back then,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I said, I need some people to work on. Would you be willing? Oh, sure, Jeanette. Okay, cool. So he had a little bit of a hunchback, and
Mm-hmm.
he had had a backache since he was 8 years old, and he
Oh
was
my
65.
goodness. Wow.
That's like what, 53 years? Crazy, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so I worked on his back, and first when I opened up the healing space, there's this little 8-year-old boy that was just like, like he was talking so fast, like nobody could understand it. But it was just like, wait, you can hear me? Like it was just this, oh my God. And it'd be like somebody had just taken the duct tape off his mouth, and he just was a blah blah blah. And I just had to sit there for like 10 minutes and let this little boy talk. And um I saw him a couple weeks later, and his backache was gone, by the way.
Wow.
He was floored. And then he didn't let me go in and do another treatment,
Oh
but his back was talking to me. His back started talking to me.
no. Yes.
And he says, and his stoop wasn't as much.
Mm.
He wasn't really, but
Hunched over.
it was a little bit,
His
and it
gait, I'm
wasn't
sure, was
as
different
much.
too. His
And
walk.
so I was talking to the back, and
Mm.
the back says, but he was a dancer. He did tandem bike riding. Balance was everything to this
Oh,
man.
wow.
And so the back was scared. He's like, well, I'm afraid to stand up, because what if I lose my balance?
Mm.
And I said, but you weren't always that way. You can still get your balance. I said, you just have to, you're not going to go necessarily like this,
Mm-hmm.
go slowly so you can still keep your balance.
Mm-hmm.
And he left, was a little bit straighter after that.
Wow.
So, it really can be amazing. And this is
Yeah.
a guy who didn't believe in it. Like, no, he wasn't believing in it at all.
He had no choice at that point. He had to believe.
Yeah, and unfortunately later he came down with pancreatic cancer.
Oh,
But he was so appreciative. He says, Jeanette, if you hadn't fixed my back, I wouldn't have been able to be on my back during the pancreatic cancer, which he had to sleep on his back. And
Yes.
he's like, I just don't know what I would have done without you.
Oh.
You know? So he was very appreciative, and he did get it, you know.
Yes.
And it is something that, yeah, I mean, like, okay, you can touch my body a couple of ways and you're going to heal me. Like it's,
Wow.
you know, we're right up in this world of go get a doctor, go to get a pill, go do surgery. And it's like, wait a minute, you can do this in a couple of hours? What, like, people, it's hard for them to even accept that that possibility is true.
Yes.
And yet when you give them that possibility, and you know, like you show them, hey, look, you're not in pain. They can still even, I mean, the first time I got healed by a healer, I had asthma really bad. And he cured my asthma in one session. Session. And
I love that.
I sat there for months and I was like, I can't believe this happened. I mean, I mean, my body, I know, you know, every month that went by, I didn't have another attack. I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. This is amazing.
You're waiting for it.
Right? You know? And so there is, like, we've been programmed, oh, it's snake oil, it's bad medicine, and it's not. What we do is so incredible. So back to your question about colors, is we need to have more color in there. So blues and greens, you can stick with the darker colors. You need the darker colors. Pastels are not good for you. You're not going to wear.
I'm not a pastel person. You're right.
You know, you can't do the pastels.
No.
You're not going to do the pastels.
Yeah.
But I just keep feeling like you need the green.
Yes.
More than the blue.
Okay.
And you need some color in there because that room is just washed.
Yes.
And so it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be, you can do it with pictures on the wall. You know, you can paint one wall, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a huge makeover, but I would definitely, you know, you want something calm on the bed, but a little bit more color.
You can actually go over and everything because you got a few minutes and we had that little glitch and everything.
Okay, very good.
I did have a quick question for both of you based on something that you both said and everything. And by the way, Jeannette, I can understand because as I told you before, my brother used to tell me that I wore way too much brown and he got me out of the brown habit because I was wearing too much.
I love brown too.
I was thinking this whole brown thing. So my brother was like, no, you're wearing brown too much. So we got to get you out.
Brown is a better color for you than gray.
Oh, okay.
Brown is better for you than gray.
Good to know. If I really have to, when I go to an event, I will make myself wear yellow. But I feel upset.
Yellow is not your color.
I wear it for the whole business thing, but I'm like, oh, it's so much.
Not yellow. If you're going to do yellow, it's got to be gold. It's got to be muted.
Yes. Yes.
Okay? Not yellow.
Not what yellow. Yeah, but my quick question for both of you and everything is based on what y'all were just talking about. But I know that in society, a lot of people are concerned about certain things that are going on in their internal body, because I know that a lot of times, particularly among men and also women, there's this notion that everybody has to get a colonoscopy and all of these other kind of things. But what you just described in your treatment is like a natural version of a colonoscopy and everything. Yes. So I was wondering, is this something that people can do naturally versus having to go and get it from the hospital ways? Because the way you just described it healing, I'm going like, wait a minute, everybody's worrying about that prostate exam and the colonoscopies and everything, and a lot of what you are talking about sounds like you can do it naturally, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
100%. About you, Jeannette?
About the colonoscopy?
Yes, like the 100% moving it, doing things through not going into the doctor, through doing it holistically.
Well, I'm a big believer in not going to the doctor. I mean, there's a time and place, you know. I mean, yes. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be there, but I think that there's a lot of things that they are not looking at as far as ways to fix this. And what they don't always recognize is the emotional component and how that's creating the illness. Yeah. And part of it's not even their fault. They're not taught this in medical school.
Right.
And they even get dinged if they do talk about this. So finding a doctor who will combine the medical and the holistic together, because you know, like if I break my arm, I'm going to the doctor. Like,
Right.
you're not going to fix a broken arm, right?
No.
I mean, I had a friend who got thrown off a horse, and she
Oh,
had to have surgery. She's got metal all through her legs and her hip. Okay,
yes.
there's a time when you need to go do that,
Yes.
and there are things that frankly we can do better. And a lot of doctors, they'll sit there and they'll do everything they know how to do, and then they'll say, "Oh, go see an acupuncturist," like
Yes.
because they know, like, they can admit that, okay, there's some we don't know. But
Yes.
um, many years ago, I had really severe case of depression.
Mhm.
And how I got out of it was I did, I combined both. I went to a therapist and
Mhm.
talked about stuff. And then I
Mhm.
went to my holistic healer and we said, okay, now let's get it out of my body.
Yes.
And when similar words and things kept coming up in the holistic healing, I'd go back to my therapist and say, okay, why isn't this going away?
Yeah.
And I had interstitial cystitis, which is canker sores on the inside of the bladder.
Mhm.
So I needed the doctor to discern what it was.
Mhm.
Okay, so once I got a name for it, and it was one of those things that they didn't really have a great cure for it. Here, take this $800, no, it was $400 pills every month. It was a lot.
Yowzer.
Uh,
Yeah, that's
25
expensive.
years ago, 25 years ago, $400 a month pills.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is not, and then they gave me 3 pages of foods to avoid. And they said, you have to try them one at a time to see which one's bothering you. And oh, by the way, you may not know for 2 weeks if
Oh,
that's what it is. Okay,
that's
that's not to drive you
awful.
crazy. It's like, okay, give me an IV with some saline in it.
Right.
Like want to not eat.
Oh
So
my
what I
gosh.
did is I went to my holistic person and I said, okay, let's muscle test these 3 pages and see which are the things I can't eat. So in 15 minutes, we went through all 3 pages, muscle tested, came down with 10 things that I couldn't eat, which very interestingly were things that I didn't like when I was a kid and I didn't want to eat.
Oh, wow.
But I had to grow up and be more mature, and so I learned how to eat these things, right?
Yes.
And so most of those things on that list I don't miss because one of the things on the list was bread. That was I can't give up bread.
Mhm.
But almost everything else on the list was stuff that I didn't like eating when I was a kid.
Right.
And I'm just like, okay, I don't my gut knew something as a kid that my brain didn't know and nobody else's brain did either.
Exactly.
And
Like my
so
issue with gluten. Exactly.
right? So,
Right.
if you got a little kid and, oh, mommy, I don't like that. Okay. It's one thing if they really don't like that. Now, if you're just feeding them sugar and they're only eating sugar and they're not eating anything else,
Right.
that's not a problem. You got to, but if you're putting food in front of the table, and
Mhm.
it's good food and, they're pretty, they eat most things and they say, mommy, I don't like this. It's okay.
Mm.
Don't force them because their body is telling them something that we as adults have forgotten how to hear.
Yes. It's the natural balance.
Right?
I agree.
Right?
Back to what he was saying too with healing ourselves, not necessarily going to a doctor, is they'll give also false diagnoses, like say fibromyalgia is just based on what they're feeling. Those are just symptoms. There's not actually a blood drawn test that shows for that. There, and I can fix fibromyalgia just by reorganizing the nerves, and it's pain caused by some random thing. Well, they don't realize that it's because the nerves are unplugged and they're firing, saying, I'm pissed off, take me home, or I'm going to keep firing these neurotransmitters saying I'm in pain. Same thing with seizures or with the bowel obstructions. They'll put a name on it because there's a symptom that they could possibly misdiagnose that it doesn't belong in this bracket. It belongs way over here in this bracket because they didn't know that these things are also going on, which makes it null and void out of here and full on over here. And my hands will feel that, which, by the way, brings me to the thought of when you were telling your story, not only about your situation, but about your friend that you helped, is I'm sure you know this, but you're a medical intuitive. So it means that you are sensing, feeling, thinking, smelling, tasting what they have gone through or are going through currently. And because you can absorb it and feel it yourself, you are able to diagnose it within you and then treat it appropriately. And that's a lot of the times what I do is someone will come in and I will have not even met someone, and 3 days prior to a phone call, I'll start getting either chest pains or my arm will start hurting, and I'm just going, what is going on here? And I'll meet that person and that pain will instantly subside and go away. And I'm like, oh, it's you. You're the culprit. You're the reason I've been in pain for 3 days now. And I'm like, well, do you have this, this, and this as well? And they're like, yeah, how would you know that? And I said, because on top of this, I had all these things as well. And so you are a medical intuitive as well as I am. And that's part of being that healer bubble. We can think, hear, smell, taste, hear, get colors from whatever it is that is not only in our surroundings, but in our universe. And we transpose that and we can help other people through that. I can help more people than I can help myself ever. I mean, I can fix more people in a day than I could fix on myself in a year.
Well, I think it's easier to, we're not tied up in their emotions, you know, and we're able to look at it as, from a more clinical standpoint. Although I don't like the word clinical because I heal with my heart, and I think you do too. So it's not an issue of being clinical, but it's just that we're not wrapped up in all the stuck emotions that are there.
The drama and the trauma.
Right. And so we can, I fortunately don't have the 3 days ahead of time. Oh my gosh. But I do have, when I'm going into the healing environment, I will be able to do, I can do virtual work. And it was really interesting. I had a client, she was having some backache, really bad backache. And one of the things I can do is I can become, with the client's permission, become surrogate for their body. Mm-hmm. And so usually when I do that, I'll get up and I'll walk around for a minute or two because I want to feel what's going on in their body.
Yes.
So just like you're talking about. So this girl was 5'9". I'm only 5'2".
Aww.
And I stood up and I was like, I'm seeing the world from 5'9". This is so freaking cool. This is so freaking cool. And she was a runner. She had these powerful legs. And I was like, I could go run a marathon with these legs. This is like, my legs do not know that. Let me tell you. But I'm like, these legs really enjoy running. And
wow.
So it was really cool to have that feeling for a few minutes.
Yes.
And I also felt what was going on with her back, and we went in and we fixed it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing being able to touch into somebody's body like that, and and be able, and what my skills will do is what you're like. I've had a couple times when somebody says, oh, I want you to work on this. Mm-hmm. And I'll start working on them, and I'm like, sorry, we can't work on that. What do you mean? I said, this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling this pain over here, and we got to do this pain before we can do that pain. Mm-hmm. And they're like, why? I don't know if they're connected. Like, I just tell you what we have to work on right now, because I had a client who was, she had some digestion issues, and we got, and I'm like, no, we have to work on your lungs. She's like, my lungs are fine. I said, no, they're not. She's, well, no, you're right. I've been, but I don't want to work on my lungs. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but your body wants me to work on your lungs. So
that's hilarious.
I'll be more than happy to work on your digestion. And what was, what the connection was between the two, that wasn't necessarily something I had to know, but what her body was telling me was that I had to work on something else first.
Yes.
So
knowing what I know, I would have said, well, you're probably not oxygenating enough. And so you're probably not getting enough oxygen through your blood flow, and your blood flow and your oxygen is what you need to digest. So if you're not appropriating this right and you're not appropriating that right.
Exactly. It
Little
makes a
stuff.
lot of sense.
Yeah.
This has
I
been
love it.
this has
Well,
been
thank you for all your time today. Oh my God, I know.
yeah, we're getting close to the end here. So
Yes.
thank you so much for coming on. I know we've been running your thing at the bottom here, but I just a couple of minutes of farewell and advice for us.
Yes. Okay, so first, heating pad, no ice. If you have an issue, whether it's MS, ALS, Parkinson's, dementia, CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, that's swelling of the brain. If you have thyroid issues, if you banged your toe and broke it, if you broke your ribs and it still hasn't healed and it's been months, anything. I know it seems odd to say anything, but my clients have shown me that if you bring it to me, I can more than likely fix it. And if not on the first time, I can do it eventually. It just sometimes needs some breaking down, but it can be anything. Come to me and I can help. I promise. Even if it's 2% at a time or 100%, all in the first shot.
I think that's amazing. So
thank you for putting my information out there too as well, because that's so much easier than trying to remember at the end of it.
Indeed, indeed. So thank you so much for being on. Maybe we'll have you on again. I know we just touched the top of a big mountain of knowledge that you have.
Yes.
And now we like to end the show with Can-Do Spice, which is healthy spices, because you got to keep the body inside healthy as well. All right. Thank you again and welcome. And then we go to Can-Do Spice.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can-Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can-Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can-Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can-Do Spice a try.